The righteous man's habitation in the time of plague and pestilence, being a brief exposition of the Psalm 91. By William Bridge. 1600 to 1670. Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fleeth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold, and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. One will be with him in trouble, I will deliver him, and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him, and ahow him my salvation. This psalm, it is thought, was made upon the occasion of the plague and pestilence that was in David's time, wherein you have the best antidote against the plague and pestilence. The whole psalm is nothing else but a great promise of special protection for those that trust in the Lord in the time of the plague, wherein 3 or 4 things are most especially considerable: evil, danger, and misery of the plague or pestilence, protection and deliverance promised in the time thereof, the persons upon whom the promise is entailed, the way, mode, means and manner, how God will deliver and protect in the time of a plague. As for the evil, danger, and misery of the plague or pestilence, you have it in many terms expressed in several verses. In the 3rd verse it is called the snare of the fowler. He will deliver thee from the snare of the fowler. It is called the snare of the fowler, because it takes men before they are aware. The word and that follows should not be in the line. So the next words do explain it. He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, from the noisome pestilence. Then it is called the noisome pestilence. In the Hebrew it is called the pestilence of woes or calamity, that is, most calamitous pestilence, that disease or sickness, that is accompanied with the most calamity. In the 5th verse it is called the terror by night, and the arrow that fleeth by day, for with this arrow God doth kill and hit men at a distance, a great way off, when they think to fly away and be at rest. It is said in the 6th verse, that it walketh in darkness, and it is called destruction that wasteth at noonday, in regard of the spreading and infective nature of it. At the 13th verse it is compared unto the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon, for the destructive and the devouring nature of it, which nothing can stand before. Secondly, as for the protection promised in the time thereof, you have that in the general at the 1st verse, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty, more particularly at the 3rd verse. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler, at the 4th verse. At the 5th and 6th verses again, thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fleeth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. And again, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, in the 7th verse, but it shall not come nigh thee. In the 10th verse, no evil shall befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. And at the last verse, with long life will I satisfy him, and show him my salvation. As for the persons whom this promise of protection is entailed upon, they are such as do trust in the Lord. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, that say of the Lord, He is my refuge, and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Verse 2. At the 9th verse, because thou hast made the Lord which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fleeth by day. At the 5th verse. And as for the means and way, and mode how God will deliver in the time of the plague, he will do it by his angels. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands. From all which, then, I take up this doctrine or observation: though the danger, evil, and misery of the pestilence be exceeding great, yet God will in an especial manner protect and deliver those that do trust in him in the time of a plague. For the clearing and prosecution whereof, first of all, I shall a little labor to show you that the evil, misery, and danger of a plague is exceedingly great. Secondly, that yet the Lord will protect and deliver those that do trust in him. Thirdly, what that faith is, and what that trust is, that God hath promised this protection to in the time of a plague. Fourthly, I would answer to some objections, questions, or cases of conscience. Then, fifthly, show how and by what means God will protect and deliver in the time of a plague. Then call upon you and myself to do our duty in this day. As for the first, I shall not be long in it. The misery and danger of the plague is sufficiently known. It is called the plague above all other diseases, as if it were the plague of plagues. The several and particular judgments and evils that fell upon Pharaoh, they were called plagues, they were all plagues, but now the pestilence carries the name of the plague, as if that, of all other diseases, were the plague of plagues. It is, first of all, a most dreadful and terrible disease. It is here called in this psalm, the terror by night. 5th verse, thou shalt not be afraid by the terror by night. Terror by night, why? The night itself is a time of fear and terror. Darkness brings fear, but the plague is the night of night, and the king of terrors. How do men quake and tremble, and fly away at the noise of this, the report of this? When God appeared in his greatness, majesty, and glory, gave a terrible appearance of himself, it is said in the 3rd of Habakkuk, that the pestilence went before him. In the 3rd verse, God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise, and his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. In the 5th verse, before him went the pestilence, and burning coals went forth at his feet. Before him went the pestilence, as his officer and executioner. When the Lord doth set forth his terrible appearance, thus he sets it forth, the pestilence went before him. Without all doubt it is that disease that is most dreadful and terrible. And, secondly, as it is the most dreadful and terrible disease, so it is the most painful disease. The more suddenly any man is taken away in his strength, the more painful is his disease he dies of. A man that is spent with sickness, he is easily blown out. But when a man in his full strength shall suddenly die, it costs him a great deal of pain. Thus it is, when the plague takes one away in his full strength in a little time, therefore it is a very painful disease, and as it is a very painful disease, so it is an uncomfortable disease. Then all friends leave us, then a man or woman's habitation. Man sit and lie all alone, and is a stranger to the breath of his own relations. If a man be sick of a fever, it is some comfort that he can take a bedstaff and knock, and his servant comes up and helps him with a cordial. But if a man be sick of the plague, then he sits and lies all alone. It is the most uncomfortable disease, and as it is that disease that is most uncomfortable, so it is that disease that is most mortal, and therefore of all other diseases it is called death. In the 6th of the Revelation, we read of the sword and famine, in the former part of the chapter, but in the 8th verse, and I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. The sword is spoken of plainly before, in the 4th verse, and there went out another horse. That was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon, to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. There is the sword. Then at the 6th verse there is a famine. I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Now at the 8th verse comes on the pestilence, and that is called death, not the sword, or famine, but the plague. Is that which hath the name of death, because of all other diseases it is the most mortal, and as it is the most mortal disease, so it is the most unavoidable disease. It may be avoided through the goodness of God, but I speak comparatively, of all diseases it is the most unavoidable. And it is the disease that is the most emptying disease. It empties houses, and it empties towns and empties cities. God threatens to empty a nation, as a man empties a dish, and wipes it, and turns it upside down. So to a family it is the most emptying disease of all other. But I will not stay here. It is too manifest that this evil, misery, and danger of a plague is exceeding great. But yet, in the second place, there are a generation whom God will protect and deliver in the day of a plague. It was always so in the most desolating judgments. When the flood came was Noah and his house spared, and when Sodom was destroyed, there was Lot and his house preserved and delivered. In the 6th chapter of Isaiah, ye read of a desolation that looks like a plague. Then said I, Lord, how long? And he answered, at the 11th verse, until the cities be wasted and without inhabitants, and the houses be without man, and the land be utterly desolate, and the Lord have removed men far away. Yet, says he at the 13th verse, there shall be a 10th, and it shall return, and shall be eaten as tale tree, and as an oak, whose substance is in them. Yet there is a generation whom the Lord will preserve and deliver in such a general desolation as this. But who are these? This psalm tells us, they are such as do trust in the Lord, those that trust in the Lord in the time of a plague. But why is there such a promise of protection entailed upon those that trust in the Lord in the time of a plague? Why, first of all, God will be all that to us which we make him, and build upon him for, as in Psalm 31:2-3, Be thou my rock, for thou art my rock, be thou my defense, for thou art my fortress. In the latter end of the 2nd verse, Be thou my strong rock, for an house of defense to save me. For thou art my rock and my fortress. Lord, be that unto me which I build upon thee for. Thou art my rock, therefore be my rock. This is his argument. Now, by faith and trusting in the Lord, we do make God our protector, and therefore he will be a protector to those that do trust unto him in time of a plague. Secondly, those that honor providence shall be kept by providence. Jacob, what a wonderful great estate he attained unto! He presented Esau with a present fit for a king to give. How came he by this great estate? There was a controversy betwixt Laban and him, and he puts the business upon providence, and providence made him rich. Those that honor providence shall be kept by providence. Faith and trusting in God in the time of a plague honor providence, therefore they that trust in God in such a day shall be kept. Thirdly, thereby God is engaged to help and deliver. In Psalm 37 last verse, the Lord shall help them and deliver them, he shall save them because they trust in him. Because they trust in him, God is engaged to help and deliver, if men trust in him. So in Isaiah 26:3, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Our very trusting in the Lord for deliverance and protection doth engage God to deliver and protect. Fourthly, when did God do ever an great thing, but it was put upon faith? You read of great victories in the time of the Old Testament, and these were put upon faith. You read of great cures in the time of the New Testament, and those were put upon faith. When did God do any great thing, but it was put upon faith? Now to be preserved and protected in the time of a plague, when thousands fall on the right hand and on our left, it is a great matter, next unto a miracle, therefore it must be put upon faith. Again, God will honor those persons, and those graces most, that honor him most. Of all graces faith honors God most, therefore God will honor that most. No wonder, then, that this protection is put upon faith and trusting in the Lord. One thing more, there lies a blessing in course for all those that put themselves under the wing of the Lord in trusting in him. In the 2nd of Ruth, verse 12, says Boaz to Ruth, the Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust, under whose wings thou hast put thyself. It is faith, and faith only, that puts us under the wings of God. Psalm 57. At the first verse, be merciful unto me, O God, be merciful unto me, for my soul trusteth in thee, yet in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge, until these calamities be overpast. It is faith that doth put a man under the wing of God. In Psalm 36:7, how excellent is thy loving kindness, O God! Therefore the children of men put their trust under the shadow of thy wings. Faith, of all other graces, puts a man under the shadow of God's wing. And there lies a blessing in course, I say, for all those that put themselves under God's wing. Therefore no wonder that this great promise of protection and deliverance in the time of a plague is entailed upon trusting in God. Well, but then thirdly, what faith is this? What trust is that which God hath promised protection and deliverance to in the time of a plague? What act of faith is it? What faith is it? I answer, first, there is a faith of persuasion, called faith, whereby men are persuaded and verily believe that they shall not die nor fall by the hand of the plague. This is well, but do not find in the 91st Psalm that this protection is entailed upon this persuasion, neither do I find this faith here mentioned. Secondly, there is a faith of reliance, whereby a man doth rely upon God for salvation. This is a justifying faith, true justifying faith. This is true faith indeed, but I do not find in this psalm that this promise of protection and deliverance in the time of a plague is entailed upon this, nor that this is here mentioned. But again, thirdly, there is a faith, I may call it a faith of recourse unto God, whereby a man doth betake himself unto God for shelter, for protection, as to his habitation, when other men do run, one this way, another that way, to their hiding places, in the time of a plague. For a man then to betake himself to God as to his habitation, I think this is the faith that is here spoken of in this 91st Psalm, for do but mark the words of the Psalm, at the first verse, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. In the hiding place of the Most High, as if he should say, when others run from the plague and pestilence, and run to the hiding places, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, that betakes himself to God as his hiding place, and his habitation, he shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty, he shall be protected. And so at the 9th verse, because thou hast made the Lord which is my refuge, even the Most High thy habitation, then shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any ague come nigh thy dwelling, as if he should say thus. In time of a plague men are running and looking out far habitations and hiding places, but because thou hast made the Lord thy habitation, and hast recourse to him as thy habitation, no evil shall befall thee, neither shall the plague come nigh thy dwelling. And again, at the 11th verse, it is said, he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways, the ways of thy calling, as if he should say. In the time of a plague men will be very apt to leave their station and calling, and so run away from the plague and pestilence, but saith he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways, the ways of thy calling and place, that is. Look, when a man in the time of a plague shall conscientiously keep his station and place, and betake himself to God as his habitation, this is the faith that is here spoken of, and this is the faith that God hath promised protection to, here in this 91st Psalm. But you will say then, is it not lawful to fly in the time of persecution? Yes, without all doubt it is, so you carry God along with you far your habitation, so you make God your habitation still. A man may fully seek the preservation of his life and the life of his family. But stay, the plague is called the hand of God, and can a man flee from the hand of God? Mark a little for answer, the hand of God is either mediate or immediate. Suppose that the plague or pestilence were the immediate hand of God, and nothing's of nature or infection in it, yet it is lawful to fly, it is lawful to go out of that place where the immediate hand of God rests. In the 16th of Numbers there was an immediate hand of God upon Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, for the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up. Here was an immediate hand of God, yet the Lord speaks unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying in the 21st verse, separate yourselves from amongst this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment, and at the 24th verse, speak unto the congregation saying, get ye up from about the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, which was the immediate hand of God. And yet notwithstanding they were to go from among them that the hand of God fell upon, though it were an immediate hand. And in the following part of the chapter the same expression is used for the plague. In the 44th verse, they murmured and the Lord struck them with the plague. Well, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, in the 45th verse, get you up from amongst this congregation, that I may consume them as in a moment. The same that is said before, is said here concerning the plague. So that I say, although the plague were the immediate hand of God, and there were nothing of nature or infection in it, yet it were lawful to fly. But secondly, the plague or pestilence is not so much the hand of God, as if there were no infection in it. For if there were no infection in it, if there were not something of nature in it, it could not be cured by remedies. Nothing would do good, therefore it is not so the hand of God as if there were nothing of infection in it, but it is called the hand of God, because God's providence hath a special hand in the sending and ordering of it. So now the famine may be called God's hand, God sends it. I will call for a famine upon the land, says God. A famine is of God sending, and therefore may I not fly from a famine. Abraham, when there was a famine in the land, went down to Abimelech. Isaac, when there was a famine in the land, went down, and Jacob, when there was a famine in the land, went down into Egypt. And is it lawful to fly in the time of a famine? And is it not lawful to fly in the time of a plague? Certainly, me one as well as the other. But then you will say, if the Lord hath promised protection and deliverance to those that trust in him in the time of a plague, whether is it possible for a believer to die by a plague, seeing the whole psalm is made to those, and promise such protection to those that trust in the Lord? Whether may a believer die of the plague? Without all doubt he may. 70,000 died in David's time. Do you think there was not a good man among them? It is recorded of several good men, that they died of the plague. But you know what is said, all things fall alike to good and bad. If a good man may not die of the plague, how can all things fall alike to good and bad? But how then is the promise fulfilled, if that a believer may die by the hand of a plague? Yes, very well, for possibly a believer may be out of his way, as good Josiah was, and died, though God promised him that he should die in peace. No disparagement to the promise, for he was out of his way, and this promise of protection in the time of a plague is made to those believers that are in God's way. He will give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all his ways. Therefore, if a believer be out of God's way and die, it is no disparagement to this promise.